So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to session W11, Efficiency in Motion, NRC Cross-Cutting Licensing Process. I am Ipo Gonzalez. I'm the acting Deputy Division Director for the Division Operating Reactor Licensing in NR, and I will be serving today as your co-chair of the session. I'm also happy to share these duties with my colleague from the Office of Nuclear Material Safety and Safeguards, Jeff Whited. So if anything goes wrong, it's his fault. So. Jeff and I are glad to have you here, and we're looking forward to a great panel discussion. But before we dive in, we have to do a few housekeeping items. The Wi-Fi code for anybody you want to go join in for the Q&A session for the attendees is RIC 2026, RIC, all caps, 2026. Also, take a moment to silence your electronic devices. And yeah, just a reminder, right, that all the sessions are being video recorded. When we get into the questions and answer segment, at the end of the presentations, we'll be using the Q&A code for the session. You can see it on the screen. You can scan it now. And also for those joining virtually, you're going to have a session where there's a Q&A box to the right side of the screen where you can put all your questions that we're going to go through in the order they are received. All right. So let's talk about why we are here. As many of you know, the NRC has been working hard to respond to Section 505 of the Advance Act, which call on us to build more efficiency, predictability, and timeliness into our licensing processes while maintaining our core mission of safety and security. And over the past year, we have made a lot of progress on that. Today, we're focusing on how the NRC is implementing Section 505 of the Advance Act through our licensing efficiency, predictability, and timeliness framework. We call it the LEPT framework, and how different groups in the NRC are working together to modernize the licensing act across the reactors and materials program. You will hear tools like enhanced preapplication engagement, draft safety evaluations, performance indicators, graded approaches, and all of that is helping streamline our reviews. This session today to bring together leaders from across the agency who are directly engaged in this work and helping to shape the new processes and improving coordination across our licensing programs. And our goal in this session is not only to share updates, but also look across our programs and hear how the initiatives are being implemented in practice and how they are improving our reviews and how opportunities remain to strengthen our efforts. Therefore, the title of Efficiency in Motion, NRC Cross-Cutting Licensing Process. But we're not only looking inside the NRC. We also invited our industry leaders who will share their perspectives and how early resolution and risk-informed strategies are impacting their projects and timelines. I want to express my appreciation, for all of them to be accepting our invitation to this panel. So we have an excellent group today. Carla, can you put the slide on the whole group? Yeah. So Brett Titus, our licensing director for the Nuclear Energy Institute, who will be discussing industry perspective on the licensing process modernization efforts. Matthew Rector, director of licensing at Constellation, who will share the fleet's perspective and insights on his experiences. Our Dan King from the NRC, acting branch chief in licensing data analytics tools and assessment within NR, who will highlight performance metrics, data-driven improvements that we have achieved. And my co-chair, Jeff Whited, he's the acting deputy division director in MSS, Division of Fuel Management, who will describe how the efficiency framework is being applied to materials and fuel cycle applications. And finally, Tim Knowles, he's a licensing and regulatory affairs manager for Global Laser Enrichment, who will share the applicant's experience and his perspective. Hopefully, each one of the presentations will provide a unique vantage point and how efficiency is being achieved and where the path forward lies. So I want to note that although I just went through quickly through our panel members, each of us will be providing a little bit of our bio and our experiences, our work experience at the beginning of each presentation. With that, I will get us started. I'll be the first in line. Yeah, so again, I'm Ipo Gonzalez, acting division director within NR and the division operating reactor licensing. I have been with the agency since 2001, and I have around 14 years of experience in many leadership positions, supervisory leadership positions in the agency, and I had great experiences. I worked from my start of the career as an inspector in Region 3 office. I'd done licensing oversight projects in operating reactors in the materials arena. I even worked in the Office of Research. Used to work also in the high-level waste program a long time ago, and also served as a technical assistant for materials for former Chairman Christopher Hansen. And now I'm in the current role in operating reactor licensing. Also, as we're entering into our March Madness, right? I earned a master's degree in material science and engineering from Northwestern University, so go Wildcats. And my undergraduate degree is in mechanical engineering from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayagüez, and go Tarzanes. I know a couple of you are here. But most relevant to our session today, for the past years, I've been serving as a part of the leaders on the NRC's and NR's licensing efficiency efforts under Section 505 of the Advance Act. Next slide. All right, so I'm gonna walk through how the NRC is responding to our major new directives around licensing efficiency and how those efforts are taking shape across our programs. So let's start with the two big drivers behind a lot of the changes we've been hearing out. First, Section 505 of the Act. In essence, this section tells NRC that our licensing reviews need to be efficient, timely, and predictable, while still keeping safety and security in the center, right? It also tells us that it's not a one-and-done effort. We got to keep reviewing and updating our guidance and techniques, right, as we learn over time. Then we have Executive Order 14300, which directs NRC to revise its regulations and guidance to support nuclear technology deployment. And this includes the meeting the 12 and 18 months review timeframes by NEMA. And really taking a hard look at how we streamline our processes, right? So between the Advance Act and the EO 14300 executive order, the message is very clear. We need to continue to modernize, improve predictability, and do it in a way that supports safe deployment. Next slide, please. This, of course, fits perfectly with our NRC mission. A key part of our mission is enabling the safe and secure use of nuclear technologies through efficient and reliable licensing oversight. And to support our mission, we're focusing in many areas. For example, expanding our graded review approach, improving our pre-application engagements, rulemaking updates like the executive order under the Executive Order 14300, streamlining our processes, exploring use of artificial intelligence tools, AI tools, to assist our staff, and strengthening our performance monitoring. Again, all these efforts will help us build out licensing system that more modern, predictable, and still anchored in safety, right? And you may notice a couple of these topics already are topics for a lot of the other sections in the RIC. Like, for example, the AI session that we had yesterday was really good. So next slide, please. Let's talk about progress, right? These diagrams, you can see that main elements, setting expectations and accountability, new techniques and guidance, and then where we engage in stakeholders. What you're seeing here is a snapshot of how the agency is aligning around improving licensing performance. And as we move forward with initiatives both in the reactors and materials sides, we focus on clear expectations for our staff, more consistent processes, and better accountability for our goals, to meet our goals. So we are updating metrics, developing new indicators, and refining the guidance that supports our reviews. Dan King will be providing a little bit more on the details in his presentation on the performance monitoring indicators and the results we're getting from that side. And we are doing all of this with ongoing stakeholder engagement, of course, because these improvements only work if the people who interact with in our processes both work inside and outside the NRC, and we all see the benefits, right? So, next slide, please. Here, I just want to give a quick glance of our LEPT framework. This helps on providing a backbone on how we're improving our licensing work. I will not go on all the details on this because we published a report last August, last year, where we kind of presented all the details on this framework. But what I wanted to say is this framework emphasizes accountability, data-driven decisions, solid project management, encouraging innovation. And so this framework gives us a practical roadmap to make sure our improvements are measurable, consistent, and sustainable across the agency. And also, Jeff will be giving some examples on his presentations how applying this framework has supported the process improvements in the materials and fuel areas. Next slide, please. So one of the greatest accomplishments, and I'm pretty proud of, is that we have established the reactor materials licensing efficiencies and processes teams. These teams are looking across programs to identify what's working, where are the gaps, how can we align our approaches. They're sharing best practices, coordinating efficiency initiatives, and that they're helping us make sure improvements are really happening and it's not in isolation. It's been fantastic as we have learned from each other in other ways of solving process issues, gathering data, establishing metrics and indicators, just to mention a few examples. Next slide. All right, you can, yeah. As you will see from our next panelists, you probably will notice some main common areas that we're seeing a lot of progress. For example, we're using data-driven indicators to increase accountability and results by front-loading reviews, developing draft SCs early in the review process, and applying at least 15% of reduction in review and duration and resource estimate, which we've been publishing those when we share with during our acceptance review with the licensee. We are also expanding the use of the graded approach, so the reviews are scoped and duration, resource estimate, and it's scaled back to the complexity and risk significance of the request. That's a huge improvement that we've been working on. We have enhanced our pre-application engagement methods and guidance, such as updating the NRC public website to improve applicants' understanding of NRC's requirements. And that enables higher quality submittals also from the applicants. We are leveraging AI tools to assist our project managers, for example, anything that may be repetitive administrative tasks or researching precedents or comparing documents. And hopefully, we see a lot of enhancement in productivity and workflow and efficiencies on that aspect. And again, across the agency, we're putting real effort into sharing our best practices so we can learn from each other. All of this to support our one goal, which is helping nuclear technologies move forward safely and help our reviews become more predictable, timely, and efficient. Next slide. So, next slide, please. Yep. Oh, all right. And to close things out in my presentation, we included a few links. There are publicly available resources, our Advanced Act implementation page, and the NRC performance dashboard. And these are great places to track our progress, see how these changes are being implemented. So you're invited to take a look at those and keep us, keep us on track if you have any concerns also. So with that, I'll turn it over to our next speaker, Brett Titus.
All right, thanks, Hippo, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity to participate in the RIC conversation on licensing efficiencies. Again, my name is Brett Titus. I am the Director of Licensing at the Nuclear Energy Institute, and I have been in the nuclear industry and in the regulatory agency and now at NEI for a total of 24 years. One of the responsibilities that I have, and you can go to the next slide, please, at the Nuclear Energy Institute is to be the leader of the Regulatory Issues Task Force. I know we've got a pretty diverse audience here, including some international members, so I'll spend just a brief moment talking about who the Nuclear Energy Institute is. In short, we are a policy development and advocacy organization, a nonprofit that supports the advancement of nuclear energy in the United States. And within our membership of approximately 400 different types of members, we represent all of the operating 94 reactors here in the United States. So as I speak about the issues, form the Regulatory Issues Task Force and the perspectives, really the opportunity we have is to provide a unified voice on behalf of our members and the reason for driving towards these licensing efficiencies. So the Regulatory Issues Task Force actually meets with the NRC on a regular basis, approximately twice a year, and we've been discussing these issues for a long time, realistically proposing new ideas to make licensing more efficient. And I just want to take a minute, if you'll indulge me. There is a letter that was actually sent by our Senior Vice President of Technical and Regulatory Services in the 2024 timeframe, and I think it really provides the background for how we got here today. This was addressed to the, at the time, EDO Ray Firstenow, and it says, in the next few years, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission will face a significant increase in the number and diversity of licensing requests from the industry, including additional applications for subsequent license renewal, power uprates, fuel cycle extensions with accident-tolerant fuel, modern technology such as digital instrumentation and control, new reactors, siting permits, and novel situations such as relicensing the Palisades plant. This rise in workload will require the NRC to operate more efficiently and flexibly so that decisions are made in a timelier manner. Traditional, rigid, laborious decision-making processes are ill-suited for today's energy market and policy environment. The reason that I chose this is because I think it's actually a testament to where we are today. The fact that we are sitting in this session talking about the progress that's being made associated with licensing efficiencies, I think is a credit to the NRC, a credit to the industry, and a really salient example of when we put our minds together and focus on the issue at hand, the kind of progress that we can make. So recognize that this letter was penned about 2 months to 3 months before the ADVANCE Act was issued, and it was also about a year in advance of the executive order that's driving a lot of our changes. So I just wanted to offer that kind of background. Next slide, please. So in response to the ADVANCE Act, NEI, in particular for sections 505 and 507, which deal with oversight, we sent in a series of recommendations about what we thought the interpretation of the ADVANCE Act and the changes that were warranted by the ADVANCE Act would look like. Our top tier recommendation is highlighted as a bold and italicized text at the top of this particular slide. And the overall goal was to process license amendments within 6 months, most of them up to 90%, and all of them within a year. If you think about the regulatory paradigm previous to this, any license amendment requests that came in without a specific outage need were going to be processed in approximately 12 months. And we knew that the NRC and licensees deserved better and could do better. So the only way to meet this particular overarching goal was to look at every step of the process along the way, to optimize it, and to make sure that all the information that the NRC needed to make those regulatory decisions in a timely manner were being provided up front. So a series of recommendations were listed as sub-bullets here, including early communications, maximizing the value of pre-submittal meetings. We had public meetings where the NRC presented data about how requests for additional information had the potential to slow down the review process and to miss the particular deadlines and timeframes which they had quoted to licensees as a part of the acceptance review process. So we had to look at how do we increase the communications associated with those requests for additional information? How do we get the right information into the hands of the decision makers early in the process through the most efficient means so that we could reach a regulatory decision within those timeframes that we were shooting for, which I think they were referred to earlier today as aggressive. And I think we would agree that in some ways aggressive, but definitely possible, especially following some of the new techniques associated with the graded approach and others that we've seen. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Also, following the Executive Order 14300, we submitted this 100-page report that had over 100 recommendations associated with the 1,000 regulations, policies, and supporting guidance. So this is our opportunity to look at a number of these things. And we've seen progress in some of these areas already. I'll highlight a couple of things. Fixed licensing schedules. We know that there's the rulemaking coming out associated with that sometime in the near future. But I want to highlight also the streamlining of license renewal. I think the progress that we've made there, if you're not familiar, some of the first few license renewals that went through that process, or second license renewal, were on the order of about 26,000 hours and over 2 years to complete those particular reviews. In the latest SECI paper, the staff has communicated to the commission that their new process going forward will be approximately 7,000 hours and take no more than 12 months to complete. So I want to highlight that as a paradigm model. We can do the same thing in licensing. I think that the new guidance that we've laid out and the expectations being reinforced by NRC leadership drive us in that direction, and it is attainable, and we can do it, and I think we're on the road to get there. Next slide, please. So on this particular slide, what I've highlighted are what we think are the most significant advancements since some of the leadership models have been rolled out from the commission on down. Including the issuance of this licensing expectations memo. This was by Andrea Vail in the early 2025 timeframe. And we've seen actually the progress associated with licensing reviews because of the direction that's in this memo. I know NMSS issued a similar memo shortly thereafter, and I think there's a lot of good progress to report there as well. We've heard the NRC leadership talk in the plenary sessions, in particular about the value of the mission statement with safety as our North Star and the implementation guidance. But what I've heard directly from our members that are within the Regulatory Issues Task Force, this OEDO procedure 0235 about effective communications has been invaluable. That paradigm shift of the culture that the NRC is not consulting, but the NRC is providing appropriate regulatory pathways to efficient decision making. That has been monumental for our industry membership. And we'd like to see that leveraged and maximized to the greatest extent. It's very consistent with the communication methods that we put into our recommendation letter on Advanced Act Section 505. So a couple of the other things that we really have appreciated is the tracking of timeliness when it comes to the things that like Dan is going to talk about. Data is important, right? Data tells us where we can do better. Data tells us how we are doing well and where we should check and adjust our systems sort of on the path forward. Next slide, please. So if there's only a few things that I leave you with as a part of my presentation, please take a look at these key messages. Regulatory processes can be optimized without compromising safety. We've heard that from the highest levels all week during the plenary sessions of the RIC. I want to emphasize that here today. The dialogue that we have had with folks in DORAL and other organizations, NMSS, has been exceptional, and we want to recognize that progress. And at the same time, you saw Chairman Nee's expectations for the staff and his lessons learned from his time at INPO about continuous improvement. So I think this can't be the end of the conversation. It needs to be the start. So we really look forward to more dialogue on how we can implement these processes consistently throughout the agency and really see their benefits there. So we are looking forward to that dialogue and in the long term, establishing guidance so that it'll be repeatable for the generations and future plants to come. So that is my last slide. One more slide. That's my last slide. So that's the end of my presentation, but I very much look forward to your questions and starting a dialogue outside of just this presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Brett. So I'll just first start by talking our topic here is efficiencies in motion. And if you haven't noticed, we're going to progress through this really rapidly and show efficiency because we're looking forward to some good Q&A at the end. So just bear with us as we get through these couple topics. And then the NRC said they intend to answer all the questions. All right, just introduction for myself, Matt Rector. I am with Constellation Energy. I am a licensing director at our corporate headquarters. And I'll just give a quick snapshot of my background. Started in the nuclear Navy in the late 90s and have worked my way through license operator. And I've worked in just about most of our departments within our Constellation fleet, from engineering, maintenance, chemistry, and now made my way back to where my true passion is, which is licensing, and very excited to be part of this effort. Next slide, please. I'm just going to briefly give a high-level view of the utilities perspective of how we're laid out and how we interface with the NRC. Brett did a nice job of kind of talking about all the activities in flight in our industry. So I'm just going to quickly mention some of these. So for those who don't know, for the operating light water reactor fleet, like we are, my peers and I are often laid out in a similar floor mat. But what you'll see here is we'll have our site regulatory organizations. And what they are, they're the boots on the ground. They're the folks interfacing with the SRIs, or the resident inspectors and senior resident inspectors. They're the ones driving inspection activities physically at the plants themselves. Additionally, they will have some of the implementation function, but they're often not the ones engaged in the license amendments and relief requests that we've been talking about already. Then we step back and look at my team's role, and where my organization that I'm currently in is the centralized regulatory and licensing operations. And what that really is those are the folks that, one, are interfacing with the NRC on a regular basis. I see some of our PMs here in the audience. We interface with the PMs, we interface with the staff, and I'll touch some more on that on my next slide. But the other thing that the corporate organization does is we are the industry influence. So Brett and us, we work together on multiple forums, both through NEI, ROP Task Force, BWR Owners Groups, PWR Owners Groups. So that function largely lies within our corporate organization, and those are different places where we touch the industry and help drive some of these efficiency gains that we're looking for. The last thing I'll mention, which is just slightly different for our fleet than maybe some others, but we do have a standalone parallel central license renewal organization. And for us, those licensing renewal and EPU activities live in a slightly different silo because that products are looking a little bit different. And for us, we see some efficiency gains, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the efficiency gains for them. Carla, next slide, please. All right, so these are just some of the interfaces that we have. So I've hit on a few of these: license amendment requests and relief requests. That's kind of the core business of the corporate team that I mentioned. And these are some of the different formats you'll see that in. So there could be a site-specific. Maybe it's one site only has one application for one outage. But there's also opportunities where you'll see fleet and partial fleet for us. We have 12 operating units in the east and in the west, or 12 operating sites, east and west. And sometimes BWR only, PWR only, you'll see some different variations of that. We do continue to leverage the TISTIF and the CLIP process. Great process, helps us standardize the industry, and that's another format. And then the one I really want to touch on here is the NOEDS emergence and exigent large. It's a product that's out there. Looking forward to efficiencies in those license amendment processes as well. But it's also something that the corporate organization does for a contingent task. And what I mean by that is you'll hear us as the utilities talking about prepping these when we aren't even at the thresholds to submit them. So that's just one of those tools that a utility has as an alternative solution when we're having equipment issues, and it's a preparation task, not necessarily ready to implement and execute. Had some great dialogue when we talk about the collaboration piece with some of our PMs recently on preparing those as a contingency, knowing that we don't intend to submit them unless that is our last solution. The last thing I'll touch on is license renewal applications. Brett talked about some of the improvements that we're seeing there for us as Constellation. We just submitted our last initial license renewal application with Clinton, and we're continuing with SLRs in the coming years for additional sites. And then to some of the staff interface, I've already hit on a few of these key points, but working with the site PMs, fleet PMs, the technical staff, we get some good interface with them through various forums, such as the audits, or if we have an inspection that requires some technical assistance. And then for the management level, formal drop-ins is a management level interface, and then some less formal check-ins that we have. Next slide, please, Carla. Wow, that's a lot smaller on the screen. All right, so Brett already hit on Brett stole my thunder on a few of these. So OEDO 0235, we already talked about that. This is where the rubber hits the road when I say what efficiencies are we seeing within the industry and in the utilities. The communication piece. Brett talked about it, said how impactful that is for us, and I couldn't agree more. We're seeing it in day-to-day discussions with the fleet PMs, day-to-day discussions with the site PMs, driving the collaboration around what do we need to do, how can we do it, what are some alternatives, but not giving clear direction. And I think it's important. It strengthens both of our organizations. It allows us to be more efficient, but not necessarily preparing documents or preparing a license amendment request that does not meet the end goal. The next one I'll talk about is pre-application readings. Just most recently had a great pre-application meeting here in Washington, and those tasks, what we're seeing is early dialogue talking about the material we intend to present, sharing what the material that we are bringing and giving that to the PM so they can pre-review it. And then what does that do? That helps right-size those audits. What that means is it allows the NRC to pick the right staff to come. They're not bringing unnecessary staff, and they're bringing the right staff to provide the right information. And then we ultimately can leverage additional pre-application meetings and hopefully refine to the right product. The last piece I'll just touch on audits. You know, a really good example of a recent audit that we've had that worked effectively was for the Limerick Digital Modernization Project. And we opened up an audit on that, especially as we were working through the last technical logistic issues with some of the CCF and the digital challenges that we had. Having that audit allowed us to have that open back and forth dialogue again and helped us get to a resolution point and then ultimately close that out by docketing it and moving forward. Next slide, Carla. All right, so the last three things I'm going to touch on, LIC 206. For those who haven't known, and I learned this as part of this panel, it's referred to as the GEM model. Anybody else ever heard of the GEM model? That was new for me. So this is the opportunity that we talked about of bringing those license amendment request reviews from the 12 months back to the 6 months. And what you'll see there at the top of the screen is we're trying to get them either into a simple review, a typical review, or a comprehensive review. And this is where we see the potential for large gains in efficiency, and we're already seeing it with license amendment requests that are being submitted. We've had some great dialogue around how do we do this? What can we include in our submittals that help the NRC screen these faster and clearer such that we have a consistent output of what the expected time frame is? And then that's a little bit of a burden on us as the licensees to make sure we're putting the risk insights in or what information is needed to make that determination and clearly pointing to it so the NRC doesn't have to do a hunt and try and find the right information. So that's an area I look forward to and continue to see good support there. Brett already covered the license renewal piece, and for the last one, I'll just talk about the burden's not all on the NRC. You know, we are excited to be here and part of this, efficiency gain, but it's also on us as the licensees to bring high quality submittals to the table. And that means that our submittals are giving clear information needed to get screenings for the graded approach. It also means that we've had those early pre-submittal meetings and we've aligned around what is the right content and not unnecessary content. If you step back and you look back in precedents, there's going to be a lot of license amendment requests that have way more information than we probably need today. So right sizing those is going to be the burden on us, and we'll look forward to the open communications to get there. And last slide. And I'll turn it over to Dan.
Hi, everyone. I'm Daniel King, the Acting Branch Chief for the Licensing, Data Analytics Tools and Assessments Branch in the Office of Nuclear Reactor Regulation. I joined the NRC as a project manager, working on efforts like accident-tolerant fuel, power uprates, and increased enrichment rulemaking. I later served as a technical assistant in the Division of Operating Reactor Licensing, supporting the implementation of the Advance Act, executive orders, budget, and other initiatives before stepping into this current role. Before joining the NRC, I served as a Navy submarine officer. I hold a bachelor's degree in mathematics from the University of Pittsburgh and a master's in engineering management from Old Dominion University. Today I'll be presenting data-driven insights for licensing efficiency, where I'll highlight how data analytics and accountability help streamline our licensing work. Next slide, please. Accountability creates opportunities for success by giving staff the space to step up, drive change, and take ownership of outcomes. Metrics are one of the many tools that help us do that. They guide our behavior, set expectations, and most importantly, assess our licensing performance. Here's a quick overview of our metrics. As you look across the slide from left to right, licensing actions enter into a pathway-like structure. The reporting level increases as the level of restrictiveness decreases. That's intentional. Metrics closest to the work units are intentionally more restrictive, so they can detect issues early and support prioritization, resource allocation, communication, or oversight. As information moves up each level, these restrictive metrics filter out more and more actions, leaving leadership with clearer, high-value insights and this isn't just a new concept. We've had similar metrics for many years through our annual performance plan, congressional budget justification, NEMA, quarterly review for several years. And as Admiral Rickover once said, good ideas are not adopted automatically. They must be driven into practice with courageous impatience. That mindset is exactly why we've taken these long-standing metric concepts and applied additional structure, urgency, and alignment to them. So what is new? Well, we aligned our milestone expectations with the 12 and 18-month review period cited in Executive Order 14300. Second, in response to the Advance Act, we took a holistic look across disciplines and developed common metrics to improve consistency, consistency, predictability, and efficiency across business lines, which brings us to real-time performance monitoring. With these integrated metrics, we can see risks as they emerge and act promptly. That strengthens accountability, supports better decisions, and keeps us ahead of issues as outlined in the Licensing Efficiency Initiatives Update report. Next slide. As a part of the NRC's response to the ADVANCE Act, we looked across the reactor and materials business lines to establish these common metrics. These metrics fall into two groups, leading and lagging performance indicators, and they're shown here on the bottom of the slide. Leading indicators track progress during a review and give early warning of potential risks. They help us act before a milestone is missed. Lagging indicators look at timeliness and resources after the review is complete, helping us identify lessons learned and broader programmatic trends. This builds on the systems we already have. Tools like the Reactor Program System, RPS, to feed secure, detailed project data directly into our data warehouse. So here's what it looks like in practice. This mock-up on the screen here is from our Licensing Efficiency Initiatives Update report, and it mirrors some of our internal dashboards. It uses a simple traffic light format, so green's on track, yellow at risk, red off track. Users can then click and drill down to that application's specific milestones to see why it is or is not behind the signal. Real-time data allows us to stay ahead of these issues and continuously improve our licensing process. Next slide. Our metrics are built on historical, data-driven resource estimates, real hours, real schedules, real performance. One of our leading indicators include a 15% reduction in resources and schedule for our acceptance reviews. A major driver is the graded estimate method, GEM, which tailors the scope based on the degree at which the applications propose to change the design basis, how the regulations are met, complexity, risk, significance, precedence, NRC-approved methodologies, all in an integrated review team IRT framework. Under the GEM, or graded estimate method, each review type, limited, typical, or comprehensive, now has clear, targeted historical reductions as seen here on this slide. In our pilot, this approach saved approximately 500 hours in just 2 licensing actions. Next slide. The historical data driving these reductions comes directly from our real-time project management tools. One of the key tools is our effort and schedule estimator, or we like to call the EASE tool, which is a comprehensive view of past licensing actions. It allows our project managers to run targeted searches and queries for specific types of applications. They can filter by type, vendor, technology, or any other characteristics to see the full range of historical performance. From there, the project manager can evaluate what's unique about the current request in front of me. Some actions may be routine and could justify going below the historical. Others may be a first of a kind or more average, and they can adjust as needed. This tool helps the project managers develop what's realistic based on real performance data. The technical reviewers can also drill down based off their discipline, their branch, and see exactly what their reviewer role will look like. Our cost estimator tool and accompanying level of effort tables on our public website provide regulatory certainty and support planning as well. They use the same underlying data as our internal tools like the EASE tool, so stakeholders like those in this room have access to the same information, and I encourage you to explore those resources. Next slide. So since implementation of the ADVANCE Act and Executive Order 14300, we have seen some great progress. 40% reduction in our median project schedules, 47% reduction in review duration under our revised schedules, a 35% reduction in median level of effort estimates, all the while achieving 90% of our license actions completed on time or ahead of schedule this past fiscal year. These results are strong, but the process behind them matters just as much. We emphasize accountability at every step to ensure licensing remains safe, efficient, and predictable. We use data analytics to continuously monitor performance and conduct public meetings and workshops with our stakeholders to share these best practices moving forward. Next slide. So at the end of the day, our success isn't defined by one metric or one initiative. It's defined by our collective commitment to safe, efficient, and predictable licensing. The progress we've made shows what's possible when we combine data, accountability, and the willingness to challenge our old assumptions. But sustaining that progress requires partnership. So we stay engaged, hold us accountable, and continue working with us to improve so that we can continue to serve the public to the best of our capabilities. Together, we can ensure our licensing process remains transparent and responsive to the evolving needs. Lastly, I encourage you to stop by our digital exhibit, Efficiency in Action, Improving Licensing Through Data, to hear directly from the great staff at LData on the work they're doing for this progress. I'll turn it over to Jeff Whited to discuss implementing the LEPT framework.
Thanks, Dan, and good afternoon, everybody. Real quick before I get started, I've seen a couple people taking pictures of the presentation, so I just did want to highlight that all of our presentation material is available on the RIC website, which is a great opportunity to get the full slide presentation. And then also, if you just like a picture of me, I'll stand out back afterwards for selfies. So again, thanks to my co-chair, Ipo, and all the other panelists here today. So as Ipo noted, my name is Jeff Whited, and I'm the Acting Deputy Division Director in the Division of Fuel Management and our Office of Nuclear Material Safety and Safeguards. I've been with the NRC for about 16 years now in a variety of positions across the agency, including as a Headquarters Operations Officer in our Office of Nuclear Security and Incident Response. You might have seen me yesterday giving the tour. And then I also have been a project manager and a branch chief in our Division of Operating Reactor Licensing and NRR, multiple project manager positions in NMSS, and just recently I completed a year-long detail to the Office of Management and Budget as part of the White House Leadership Development Program. Next slide, please. So this afternoon I'm going to talk to you about efficiencies that we've gained as part of our licensing efficiency project team. Specifically, the NRC examined the current regulatory processes under each of the 4 NMSS business lines. This is spent fuel storage and transportation, fuel facilities, nuclear materials users, and decommissioning and low-level waste, and identified over 100 opportunities for improvements that focus on process, document quality, communications, and culture. Over my next few slides, I'm going to talk about how the agency employed qualitative and quantitative measures to identify, evaluate, and prioritize efficiencies. I will go over notable examples where we were able to streamline our licensing processes, and specifically we'll start with the spent fuel storage and transportation business line. So as part of this, we worked on our use of core teams for early alignment for major issues. We reassessed the decommissioning funding plan reviews, and we worked on ranking storage reviews. So for the use of core teams, for the Transportation Certificate of Compliance, we saved about 12 months and 800 hours. This is on a baseline of 2 years and 1,300 hours. For reassessing the decommissioning funding plan reviews, we risk-informed our approach and reassessed the environmental and financial reviews as part of this, and we saved about 75% of resources for these reviews. And we use risk insights, specifically our risk tool, to determine the level of staff effort needed to complete licensing reviews for dry spent fuel storage. Some factors that influence these resource estimates include the risk profile, ranking amendment changes as small, medium, or large, grading safety margin by significance, and determining whether confirmatory analysis was needed. And next slide, please. For the fuel facility business line, the LEPT team is modernizing the licensing by streamlining reviews, improving predictability, and reducing resource burdens for both applicants and NRC staff. It emphasizes early engagement, as my colleagues, as my co-presenters have mentioned, scaled reviews, the use of precedent, and efficient information exchange processes. The pre-engagement benefits include staff conducting advanced review of draft application chapters, enabling significant issue identification, and often resolution before formal submission. This is in alignment with what you heard from the chairman yesterday, and providing substantive feedback and best practices in the pre-application space for our licensees and applicants. We also have early identification of application gaps to ensure a smoother acceptance review and reduce downstream REIs. These efficiencies help to meet shorter schedules with fewer agency and licensee resources. For our application review efficiencies, the NRC applies new review guidance using estimated precedents from previous licensing actions. Reviews are scaled, focused only on new or changed information. A new environmental review process is used to reduce repetition and streamline documentation. And I also want to highlight, as Matt and Brett did, the use of EDO procedure 0235 is just again, as they both noted, and I'm glad to see that they've enjoyed that process as well. But again, just a great tool that we have on staff to really enhance our communications with licensees and applicants. Additional efficiency tools include licensing audits and clarification calls that provide targeted real-time issue resolution, and the use of requests for confirmatory information, which allows resolution of minor clarifications without full REIs. Combined, these tools create a more predictable and efficient licensing pathway. Next slide, please. In implementing the LEP framework for the nuclear materials users, or NMU business line, we want to highlight 3 specific areas. We modernized the materials license application portal. This was deployed in November of last year, which is an online materials license application of form NRC form 313, but utilizes the web-based licensing system and as an external-facing modernized licensing portal for nuclear materials licensees and applicants. We streamline application intake process, user-friendly interface, and it allows for secure submission and coordination with the NRC staff. For the data-driven general license accountability process improvement, under this initiative to improve generic licensee registrant accountability, staff introduced a real-time internal dashboard to monitor situational intelligence and unresponsive general license registrants. Staff incorporated best practices from agreement states and collaborated in a working group among NMSS, regions, and NRC staff. And this has led to an overall reduction in the number of unresponsive generic license registrants by about 91%, a rather significant accomplishment. Finally, we worked on, the pre-application engagement, which you've heard quite a lot of. We've also, NMU developed an external landing page for emergent medical technologies within the existing medical uses licensee toolkit website to manufacturers who are looking to license a new and emerging medical technologies. In February of this year, NMU streamlined the pre-application engagement process to achieve more efficient and reliable licensing of byproduct and certain source or special nuclear material. Next slide, please. And finally, I want to highlight the work done by the LEP team for the decommissioning and low-level waste business line. Again, really highlighting the efficient use of the pre-application meetings and regulatory audits. The NRC staff these are highly effective tools to align early on site conditions, technical approaches, and expectations, which, as I've noted for all the business lines, reduce REIs, minimize review time, and streamline licensing actions. The use of specialized teams for first-of-a-kind or complex reviews has proven successful. For example, our DISA application was completed within 6 months for an emergent technology. A phased final status survey approach, as demonstrated at the Fort Calhoun station, in coordination with the license termination plan, supports incremental oversight, early issue resolution, and greater schedule predictability. Dan mentioned quite a few of our indicators, and specifically I want to highlight the Congressional Budget Justification Indicator 1.1.1, which is an enhanced schedule and risk prediction tools, and this will aid the other things that you've heard my NRC colleagues and I talk about, including dashboard tracking, which will improve milestone visibility, identify critical path risks early, and strengthen confidence in licensing metrics. And finally, as I know my time has run out, again, I've got here very late in this process, so I did again want to thank the NRC staff for their incredible work that has been part of this. It's really shown some efficiencies that we were able to see today. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn over to Tim.
Thank you, Jeff. First, I'd like to thank the NRC for the opportunity to participate in this technical session and discuss the Advanced Act and the efficiencies gained in the licensing process, particularly as they apply to the GLE Paducah Laser Enrichment Facility license application. Before I begin, I'll briefly mention my background. When I told our CEO, Steve Long, that I plan to start with a short bio, he asked how much time I had for the presentation. I told him about 8 to 9 minutes. He said, well, that'll only give you about 2 minutes for the rest of the presentation. So I'll keep this brief since you can read my full bio in the program agenda. I've spent more than 40 years in the nuclear industry, including 10 years in the nuclear Navy, the last 19 years in fuel cycle facilities, 10 years at a Category 3 enrichment facility, 7 years at a Category 1 HEU fuel manufacturing facility, and the last 2 years with GLE. That experience has given me a broad perspective on both the operational and regulatory aspects of nuclear fuel licensing. Next slide, please. Let me start with a brief overview of Global Laser Enrichment, or GLE. GLE is jointly owned 51% by Silex Systems Limited and 49% by Chemico Corporation. GLE holds the exclusive worldwide license to deploy the Silex laser enrichment technology for uranium enrichment. Our objective is to deploy the world's first commercial laser-based uranium enrichment facility in Paducah, Kentucky. To support this project, GLE executed a land swap agreement acquiring approximately 690 acres adjacent to the former Paducah gaseous diffusion plant. For feed material, GLE has exclusive rights to enrich a significant portion of the Department of Energy's depleted uranium tails inventory. Initial operation will focus on approximately 2,000 metric tons of depleted uranium tails, enriching them back to natural uranium equivalent in the form of UF6. This project represents both a technology advancement and a strategic opportunity to recycle existing uranium resources. Next slide, please. This slide provides a timeline of the PLEF licensing effort. I won't go into the earlier historical details, but it's worth noting that GLE previously held an NRC license for a laser enrichment facility in Wilmington under GE ownership. Focusing on the current licensing effort, on February 13, 2023, GLE submitted a letter of intent to the NRC. June 24, 2024, we held the pre-application kickoff meeting with NRC staff. On December 30th, 2024, GLE submitted the environmental report. And then lastly, on June 27th, 2025, the full license application was submitted. This timeline reflects a structured pre-application engagement process that played a major role in improving efficiency during the review phase. Next slide, please. Before discussing the environmental report in detail, I'd like to reference a comment made during last year's RIC EDO plenary session. John Lubinsky, former NMSS office director, was asked what the NRC is doing to expedite licensing reviews. He made a statement that resonated with many of us in the industry. In summary, licensing whether safety, security, if the approach is adequate and ensures safety and security, the goal should be to get to yes in licensing. He also noted that in some cases, regulatory constraints may require exploring alternate approaches, including exemptions. Another important point he raised was reducing unnecessary requests for additional information, RAIs, and focusing on what information is truly needed to support the safety evaluation. This philosophy influenced one of our key licensing approaches. GLE requested to bifurcate the environmental report from the safety analysis portion of the license application because the ER development was significantly ahead of the safety evaluation development. This allowed for early pre-application engagement, allowed the NRC to provide written observations, also allowed the NRC to conduct scoping activities. The result was no formal RAIs were issued associated with the environmental report. To me, that's pretty amazing. Because of those efficiencies, the final environmental impact statement is now expected about 9 months ahead of the original 24-month schedule. Next slide, please. I'd like to highlight several pre-application engagement activities that significantly improved the process. First, GLE established a secure portal, which greatly streamlined the exchange of draft application materials. Through the portal, all 12 chapters of the license application were submitted in draft form for advanced review. NRC staff provided early observations and feedback. That gave GLE the opportunity to incorporate revisions before the formal submission. We also had numerous clarification calls with technical reviewers. In many cases, updated drafts were submitted before the formal application, allowing issues to be addressed early. These interactions helped reduce both requests for supplemental information, RSIs, and formal RAIs later in the review process. Next slide, please. On June 27, 2025, GLE submitted the Paducah Laser Enrichment Facility license application. The NRC issued formal acceptance on August 4, 2025. That acceptance review was completed in 38 days compared to the 60 days allowed under regulation, and more importantly, there were no requests for supplemental information. And again, in my 19 years in the fuel cycle facility industry, I've never seen that before. Another positive aspect of the acceptance process was that the NRC staff provided observations that did not affect acceptance criteria. That gave GLE the opportunity to voluntarily address those items before they evolved into formal RAIs, further improving review efficiency. Next slide, please. So now, to close, I'd like to briefly summarize strengths of the process and areas for improvement. Over the past 18 months, several initiatives have clearly streamlined the licensing process. In particular, the document portal significantly improved collaboration and draft review. Early engagement through pre-submittal meetings and draft reviews, and also staff observations that reduced the need for formal RAIs. These practices have had a measurable impact on efficiency. I'd be remiss not to provide the NRC with some recommendations going forward. That said, there are still opportunities for improvement. One area is greater consistency in NRC staff assignments and technical reviewers throughout the process. I admit that we did have a number of technical reviewers that got changed out during the review process. Another area involves regulatory requirements under 10 CFR 7022 contents of applications, particularly items that may not be needed until closer to operations or the receipt of licensed material. Such examples include decommissioning funding plans, fundamental nuclear material control plans, especially when it relates to unauthorized enrichment program, liability insurance provisions, and security plans related to the protection of classified information. I was responsible for submitting an SPPP, an ISSP, and a classified matter transportation security plan as part of our formal application process. To me, these are best suited just prior to bringing classified material on site. Finally, revisions to New Reg 1520 are needed, and this effort is currently being pursued through an NEI-led initiative. Closing. I'll conclude with a quote from an article titled, "Expert Insight, NRC Independence, Modernization, and the Moment Ahead," written by former NRC Commissioner Bill Ostendorf and Admiral Richard Mize. They note that many of the current initiatives represent long-needed efforts to improve regulatory efficiency while maintaining the NRC's core mission of protecting public health and safety. The Commission has recently clarified that mission to reflect today's reality, protecting public health and safety while enabling the safe and secure deployment of civilian nuclear technologies. That recognition across Congress, the administration, and industry stakeholders reinforces that strong oversight and timely deployment must move forward together. Thank you.
I'm getting a thumbs. Oh, there we go. Thank you. All right. I want to thank everybody again for the presentations today, and we'll go ahead and start the Q&As here real soon. But I would like to note there's, what, 6 of us up here. 1 of us finished within the required 8 minutes, so metrics, not so great, guys. We could, always improving, always improving. So, all right. As you all may have been aware, if this is not your first technical session, so we have a QR code to help you all submit your questions. Then I get to hand them out with this nifty iPad. So we'll go ahead and get started. Ipo, the first question is for you from a member of the audience. So what are the actual process changes that lead to improvements like 6 months instead of 1 year for license amendments? Fewer concurrences required, faster paperwork processing, accountability for delays. What is the secret sauce?
Wow, okay. Yeah, great question. I know we got a recommendation, from, as Brett mentioned, from the NEI on the, 12 months and 6 months, but we took another approach where we started looking at all the reviews as we presented, either utilizing a greater approach, but it's more having more realistic schedules, right? So we went into more accountability in that process of, all right, let's look at the amendment that comes in using the tools that we have, like the estimator tool, and trying to hone in on that estimate. We from that particular, and the hours, also the resources that are being used. So from the 12 months that we were defaulting to everything at 12 months, we went through that, and we started putting a metric on accounting for that, right? How many we will accomplish on that estimated time, plus or minus 15%. That's how we started. Now we're going into, okay, we went through a phase of going to, let's use the 15% plus the graded approach, and now I think we're on the plus minus 10% on completing licensing action. So it's been the secret sauce is being more in the expectations, how we communicating all those process changes to the staff. For example, as mentioned, the expectation memos, but also from our part of management, also providing those tools and being clear in how to use those tools internally, and the part when we have to also communicate it out to the licensee to be transparent in the public on how the processes are working. But it's a lot of that communication leadership with our staff and making them understand and bringing them into the fold for using these processes.
Thanks, Ipo. Dan, the next one's for you. Many of the NRC's efficiencies and cost estimating tools, like EASE, rely on historical licensing data. If much of that data reflects older, more labor-intensive review processes with multiple runs of RAIs, how is the agency ensuring those models don't bake past inefficiencies into the estimates for newer, more streamlined submittals? Otherwise, is there a risk that the tools end up predicting and effectively reinforcing longer review timelines than may actually be necessary today?
Thanks for the question. So I think one key point here is our EASE tool allows the project managers to have a lot of different specific queries and filters. So they can filter specifically down to the application type, the vendor, the specific nuances of that, what's in front of them, and also a date range so they can weight the applications that have come in more recently in the past year since we've implemented the Advance Act and the executive orders more heavily when they're doing their estimates. So they can use those estimates to kind of continue to take those reductions. That said, we do acknowledge, as we move forward, at a certain point, we're not going to be able to continuously take off. So I think what we're looking for is kind of reaching a new lower steady state level for these timelines and estimates, which one that we can shift more towards, consistency as opposed to the efficiency aspect.
Thanks, Dan. All right, Matt, I have the next question for you. The presentation has illustrated that the NRC is positively changing. With that in mind, should certain states have ability to regulate inherently safe advanced reactors? That is probably not for you.
That is a loaded question for me to answer.
We'll get you a different question. All right. Brett, we'll go ahead and go to you then instead. Sorry. How are licensees preparing their staff for increased NRC efficiencies? Faster NRC reviews can't translate into saving time on projects if licensing personnel are not prepared to answer technical questions sooner in the processes that they have in the past.
Yeah, so thanks, Jeff. I think it's an astute observation. It's very loud. But we, of course, everyone has to adjust to the new pace, which we're doing things. So as licensees develop their own schedules about when to implement those changes at the plant, when to train their operators on changes at things like technical specifications, they're going to have to factor into account when the responses will come back from the NRC. So it's very important that we communicate all the way along the process, starting from the pre-submittal meetings to the application with those key milestones in mind. If you have your calculations ready, have your staff available to support those increased timeframes. I think Matt said it best. We're ready on the industry side to step up and do our part. And in the event that we need to be held accountable as well when it comes to clarification calls and requests for additional information. So it's something we communicate on frequently within our regulatory issues task force meetings. People share where they're at with their particular reviews, positive trends and behaviors we've seen with the NRC staff on different applications that may be of use to the other members. So I think that's the kind of the comprehensive answer all the way around as to the industry has to do their part, and we're aligned to take that challenge up.
Yeah, if we just add to the aspect of that common coordination and communication with the PMs is critical when we get into stacked license amendment requests that are collapsing on their schedule. So if we had a traditional license amendment request schedule with everything at 1 year, you could clearly lay out your implementation plan. Well, now that we'll have ones that you're submitting that collapse to 6 months, but yet others are still at the 9-month, it's going to be a lot of open dialogue with the PMs going through what's on your plate and when those implementations are actually needed, as Brett had alluded to. But I think it's also important to remember, just because a license amendment request is approved on, say, January 1st, doesn't mean I have to implement it on January 2nd, right? We allow the NRC to work at the speed and efficiency they have time for, and we can hopefully allow them to get a buffer ahead. We can still implement in March or April or June, and sometimes we have staggered implementations. And that's important for us as the industry to make sure we don't step on top of ourselves with license amendment and tech spec pages that are maybe touching the same pages and license amendments that are going to happen in the same year.
Thank you both. All right, we'll go on to the next question. This one's for me. What is doing to remain as consistent as possible with NRR? Having different approaches / processes creates confusion for licensees that use the same staff to make changes. So thank you very much for that question. So as Ipo noted during his presentation, we have a cross-agency, the MLEP and RLEP teams. These teams are working very closely together to ensure that best practices for NRR or operating reactor license reviews can be implemented in NMSS. So there's that, again, making sure those best practices are implemented agency-wide. Again, additionally, right, there will continue to be improvements. So if you see instances where we may have done something a little bit different than our NRR colleagues, do please reach out and provide those to us as an opportunity to enhance our processes. Tim looks like he's ready to respond, so go ahead, Tim. I thought he was ready to talk about how great I was. That's okay.
Hey, Jeff, can I add something to that? Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Ipo.
One thing I want to note is when you read the section 505, right, it mentions reactor. We went above that. That's part of our licensing processes are very similar when you think about it on the RAIs and the timeliness, all that. They may have different time frames, but that was done on purpose. Like we went and, okay, let's expand the advanced activities reactor. No, one NRC, let's get everybody together, NMSS side, because under us we have also answer reviews, environmental stuff, but also the same happens from the material side and fuel cycle and spent fuel storage. So this was part of that great effort to anything that we can learn is very similar, whatever you go on. If you have licensing experience, me specifically, I have licensing experience on both sides. There are a lot of similarities. So having the right people there, right PMs, technical reviewers, providing feedback on the processes and the changes we're making has been instrumental. So, and through this team, it's been pretty great on doing that. So, just add this.
Thanks, Ipo. Tim, I do have a question for you. So what is the secret, or again, secret sauce? You guys are obsessed with the secret sauce stuff. The secret sauce to providing an environmental review that had no RAIs?
That's a great question. And just to give you the magnitude of our environmental report, it was 2,700 pages of information that we provided to the NRC. But we provided it early before the safety analysis portion of the license application. And although there were no formal RAIs issued, we did receive about 23 pages of observations that we worked through prior to the formal acceptance period. So the fact that we bifurcated and was able to submit the environmental report 6 months ahead of the safety analysis portion allowed the NRC to review the environmental report, provide us with observations, allowed us to resolve observations so that when the formal acceptance and review time frame started for the environmental report, it was essentially clean.
Thanks, Tim. Ipo, another question for you. What is the status of the EO 14300 rulemaking? What efficiencies are included in that, and when will individuals be able to comment?
All right. Again, I'll speak about the details on that a lot, but you can observe there's a couple of the aspect that we're already implementing on the estimates of 12 and 18 months. We already have kind of started with the NEMA metrics. That we already started on that aspect for putting in on our schedule. But as I think there's a public meeting happening tomorrow afternoon, so I will encourage you, very interested in that, listen to that public meeting, because in my understanding it's going to give an overview of where the EO 14300 changes are going to be for that. And when the public period is going to start, I think we're going to get a better understanding on the exact time frame. So I will invite you to go to that public meeting. Yes.
Thanks, Ipo. Sorry about that. Dan, the dashboard that was shown only uses green, yellow, red, no white. Can you please share that brilliant So in your presentation, there was a graph showing savings in time and resources. These varied greatly in proportion for the different reactors for these two categories. What factors influence these results?
So the graph is a visual representation of the data in the Advance Act 505 report we issued in August. And the delta in the data is largely due to the types of licensing actions that are being represented there, some of which are on the magnitude of a month and others are more towards the year. So that is kind of why you're seeing a large delta in terms of the percentage and reduction from hours and resources, because you're looking at the overall number. That said, the tools that we use to achieve those reductions are relatively similar between the two. So leveraging AI, like we talked about yesterday, and the pre-application guidance, the OEDO procedural and communications, and other small things that all start to add up when you look at the full scale of applications and the number of hours across the review.
Thanks, Dan. EPO, we've heard a lot of praise for the new EDO procedure on communication 0235. What are we seeing and specifically on path forward on submittals, what are we seeing so far on this, and how will we ensure this is a healthy dialogue?
That's a great question. I've been, from my experience, right, and from before and after that procedure, right, it's been very successful on us for having not stepping back from, there's a detailed conversation that we have to go with the licensee. In the past, there were hesitations sometimes where everything had to be done, for example, a public meeting, and we got to wait the 10 days or for the announcement. But this is providing us the flexibility. For example, I'll give you an example of if there's a moment where we got the project manager having a conversation with the technical reviewer, there's a question comes in and we need a clarification call to come in quick. Now we're more comfortable of going ahead with licensee having that conversation, but PM is responsible, right? We want to be transparent and providing a summary of that conversation afterwards. So changes like this and the flexibility we have more on providing more pathways and being without consulting, right? Because I've seen those conversations where we have clarification with all licensees and providing, okay, we're not telling them what to do or on what path to show, but we're providing that okay, different pathway, 3 pathway, 4 on the licensing process, or on precedents that we may have in our site, like we remember the moment, oh, this other site, I recall they did something similar, and the licensee may not be, oh, we didn't know about that one, and providing some of the aspect of any observations that we have without telling them, directly we can't, right? We got to remain independent on our decision making. So I've seen a lot of success on that for the guidance, and that's why you're hearing right now here the great things are on that part. And our technical reviewers and our project manager feel more comfortable having the back from our leadership throughout this procedure, right? So.
Yeah, I'll just add 2 items. You mentioned RAIs. There's a time and place for RAIs and that formal process that's there, but not every question has to be formalized in RAI. So when we step back and ask, where are the efficiencies that can be gained, adding those sometimes unnecessary administrative burdens that don't provide any additional clarity or resolution to the question that was asked, that's where that open dialogue can either eliminate or provide a much clearer RAI so that we only have to answer it once. And then the second piece that I'll just mention, which we talk about where are some really concrete examples where we saw improvements in that open dialogue. I'll speak specifically for one of the plants in our fleet. We got into an early conversation with a very small digital project that we were working through. And we were at the table with the NRC talking about pre-application meetings, license amendment requests, and how we were going to bring that product to fruition. And through some open dialogue and some hard challenge, we actually ended up in a spot where we have no product that we're bringing to the NRC. We're going to do it under a 5059, and it'll still give the NRC an opportunity to follow through on that via the normal inspection process. So it's not removing the NRC entirely from the loop. It's just putting it in the most efficient process within the licensee control, and it's still auditable and regulatable.
One last addition, because we're talking less RAIs, but just to make sure, because when we say no RAIs, right, we still, at the end of the review, if there's anything necessary that needs to be in the docket, we're either an RCI or an RAI. We as a staff and our independent, we're going to do that aspect. But a lot of this clarification calls and either deciding to go to an audit, that is helping out on getting more from our staff side, like understanding, like, okay, now we understand that is not needed. And having that combination helps out on that, having a more streamlined process in our licensing review. So, but.
Thanks, Ipo and Matt. This next question is for both Matt and Tim. Can you please describe how operating companies will benefit from this increased efficiency from the NRC? How will you take advantage of the reduced review times?
Well, the bottom line is expense, okay? Timeliness and expense. You know, efficient reviews result in lower charges for the applicant, and more timely we can now accelerate our timeline for the next phase of the project as a result.
Yeah, I'll answer that two ways. First, I'll say by power on the grid. And what do I mean by that is if you take a look at like our license renewal and our EPU organizations, if you start collapsing those reviews to the left, both for a fleet like ours or even a single unit site, and you can get through a license renewal or an EPU in a much shorter period, that's megawatts, clean, carbon-free power put on the grid sooner. You know, so that is one efficiency where we can clearly see that, you know, mimics the messages you've heard in all the plenary sessions about getting clean power on the grid. So that's probably the biggest one that I would share.
Thank you both. Brett, with the graded approach, risk-informed reviews, and streamlined licensing all showing real results, where does NEI see the biggest remaining opportunity? What's the next frontier for efficiency that NRC and industry should tackle together?
So I think it's largely an implementation space. I think we've seen a lot of the direction laid out by the NRC's senior leadership. We've seen these metrics established in estimate form primarily. I think it's going to come down to data-driven decisions about how it's being implemented across the board. I think we're still at the very earliest implementation processes or portion of this journey. So I think we need to continue to have dialogue on where we see the actual performance. And when we don't see the performance, we need to check and adjust. Of a number of the recommendations that we made in our Advance Act 505 Section 505 letter, a lot of those have been implemented by the NRC already, as we talked about today. There's still a few in the field of AI, potentially, you know, there's more efficiency to be gained there. I think that's come up in a number of different sessions, including the one yesterday that Rachel and company were at. So I think there's still some juice to be squeezed there. I think we also need to just continue that idea of improvement over time and striving for excellence. There's going to be things that we learn as we implement these new processes that'll unveil additional efficiencies. You know, we'll keep getting better at it. I think the LIC 111 in particular was just revised to incorporate the idea of supplements to replace RAIs. So it's now an acceptable practice that we saw the value of audits, we saw the value of that open communication, and licensees essentially having the choice, do I want to respond to that via formal RAI back and forth process, or do I just submit a supplement that is easier for me to complete, get to you sooner so that we can move these things forward. So I think those learnings will continue to emerge as we implement these.
Thanks, Brett. Ipo, this next one's for the both of us. Can you expand upon the role NRC is allowed to play during pre-submittal meetings? Can they answer direct questions?
Oh, of course, we can ask answer their questions. There's question on providing that we need to put clarification on the licensing process or anything, yeah, that is pertaining that the particular review. Of course, that's the part of what we have in that conversation. The pre-application meeting is for, of course, not making any decisions. We're not making any decisions there. There's no application in front of us, right? So, but to have clarification and an idea of, for example, we want to have an idea of what type of information we're going to receive and have the right experts there and all that, right, to have the right coordination, or even for the future review, right? That's why pre-application. But those conversations, I think from our side, is very helpful for us also, you know, trying to establish, right, what are from our side of the review, the need that we're going to have, right, from our expertise and all that, right? So, yeah, if there's any direct questions on what, you know, if this is the right path, we provide the options, or the licensing options that there are. So, what do you want to add?
Yeah, thanks, Ipo. The only thing that there's really not much to add. Just again, it's about providing, you know, having that discussion on that clarity, and you know, again, just making sure these are effective meetings that lead to effective licensing applications and effective reviews. So, thanks, Ipo. The next question is, okay, these processes help with existing plant licensing. What can be used to support new applicants? Or better yet, what can new applicants do to make their application process more streamlined? So I'll go ahead and start with that one, and then we could turn it over to any others. But again, we've mentioned it quite often. It's that pre-application process. So as a new applicant, it's having that. So again, I just want to highlight the excellent NRC website, where I know we have a new applicant landing page for both the new reactors, and we're working on one for the fuel facilities. So for anybody who's interested, definitely go to those websites and just learn all the information you can there. But it's about that pre-application engagement. It's about the discussions that we can have before the submittal comes in to, again, make the most use out of the resources that are here. And I apologize, all my questions went away. All right, yeah, I think that might be why we'll go ahead and cut off. So again, I'll just go ahead and wrap it up here. Thank you to those of you who did ask questions. My apologies that we couldn't get to all of them. I want to again thank EPO for being the co-chair of this session, and then Dan, Brett, Matt, and Tim for joining me up here. Additionally, I did want to take an opportunity to thank Carla for being the session coordinator. A lot of this would not have happened without her, as well as Carla, and yes, definitely well-reserved applause. And thanks to Carla and Jihan for being our liaisons here. And again, all of us had help in putting together these presentation materials and our Q&A. So thanks to all the staff who helped for the slides, and thanks to those who were working with the digital exhibit. And thanks to all of you for attending the session. So thanks again, everybody, and have a good rest of your day at the RIC.